A history of conflict, setting the stage. The Israel-Gaza War of 2024 erupted against a backdrop of decades-long conflict. This conflict is rooted in competing claims to the same land. Both Israelis and Palestinians consider the region their rightful homeland. Over the years, there have been wars, peace talks, and countless acts of violence. The Gaza Strip, a small Palestinian territory controlled by Hamas, has been a focal point of conflict. Hamas, considered a terrorist organization by Israel and many Western countries, has engaged in numerous rocket attacks on Israel. Israel, in turn, has imposed blockades and launched military operations in Gaza. In the years leading up to 2024, a period of relative calm settled over the region. However, tensions remained high. The underlying issues of land, security, and recognition remained unresolved. The situation was like a pressure cooker waiting to explode. The events of October 7, 2024 would prove to be the catalyst for a new and even more devastating chapter in this long and bitter conflict. On October 7, 2024, the world awoke to the news of a massive and coordinated attack on Israel. Hamas, the militant group controlling Gaza, had launched a surprise offensive. The attack was unprecedented in its scale and ferocity. It involved a multi-pronged assault by land, sea, and air. Hamas fighters infiltrated Israeli communities near the Gaza border, killing and capturing civilians. Simultaneously, a barrage of rockets rained down on Israeli cities, targeting civilian infrastructure. The attacks sent shockwaves through Israel, shattering any sense of security. This brazen assault marked a significant escalation in the conflict and plunged the region into a new cycle of violence. Israel responded to the Hamas attack with swift and overwhelming force. Declaring war on Hamas, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to destroy their capacity to ever harm our citizens again. The Israeli Defense Forces launched a massive air campaign targeting Hamas installations in Gaza. Airstrikes pounded suspected rocket launch sites, tunnels, and command centers. As the Israeli air offensive intensified, ground troops mobilized along the Gaza border. Israel launched a ground invasion, aiming to dismantle Hamas's military infrastructure and neutralize its ability to attack. The fighting was fierce and brutal, with heavy casualties on both sides. The conflict quickly escalated into a full-blown war, leaving a trail of death and destruction in its wake. As the Israel-Hamas war raged, another powerful actor in the region entered the fray. Hezbollah, the Iran-backed Shiite militant group based in Lebanon, announced its support for Hamas and launched rocket attacks on northern Israel. Israel responded with airstrikes on Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, marking a dangerous expansion of the conflict. Hezbollah's involvement raised fears of a wider regional war. The group possesses a vast arsenal of rockets capable of striking deep inside Israel. Israel, already engaged in a two-front war, now faced a multi-front conflict. The situation threatened to spiral out of control, drawing in other regional powers and potentially igniting a conflagration across the Middle East. Section 5. A Humanitarian Catastrophe. Gaza and Lebanon in Crisis. As the fighting intensified, a humanitarian crisis of immense proportions unfolded in Gaza and Lebanon. In Gaza, the Israeli bombardment caused widespread devastation. Homes, hospitals, and civilian infrastructure were reduced to rubble. The UN reported a staggering number of civilian casualties, including many women and children. In Lebanon, too, the conflict exacted a heavy toll. Israeli airstrikes targeted Hezbollah positions, but civilian areas were also hit. The already fragile Lebanese infrastructure struggled to cope with the influx of displaced people and the mounting casualties. The humanitarian situation in both Gaza and Lebanon rapidly deteriorated, with urgent calls for a ceasefire and international aid. Section 6. The world responds, calls for peace and condemnation. The international community reacted to the escalating conflict with a mixture of condemnation and calls for restraint. The United Nations Security Council held emergency meetings, urging all parties to cease hostilities and allow humanitarian access. World leaders called for an immediate ceasefire and a return to negotiations. However, despite the international pressure, the fighting continued. The deep-seated mistrust between the warring parties and the complex geopolitical interests at play hampered efforts to broker a ceasefire. The conflict exposed the limitations of international diplomacy in resolving such intractable conflicts. Section 7. The Uncertain Future. A Glimmer of Hope. As of this writing, the Israel-Gaza War of 2024 continues to rage. The path to peace remains elusive, and the cycle of violence shows no signs of abating. The human cost of the conflict continues to mount, with no end in sight. The region stands on a precipice, facing an uncertain and perilous future. Yet amidst the despair, there are glimmers of hope. Mediation efforts, led by Egypt and other regional actors, are ongoing. International pressure on all sides to agree to a ceasefire and engage in dialogue is intensifying. The desire for peace, though faint, still flickers. Section 8. The Path Forward Toward a Lasting Peace. The Israel-Gaza War of 2024 is a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the devastating human cost of conflict. It underscores the urgent need for a just and lasting solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, one that addresses the legitimate aspirations of both Israelis and Palestinians. Achieving peace will require immense courage, compromise, and a commitment to dialogue. It will require addressing the root causes of the conflict, including the occupation, security concerns, and the plight of refugees. The international community must play a constructive role, supporting negotiations and providing humanitarian assistance. Ultimately, the path forward lies in recognizing the shared humanity of Israelis and Palestinians and working together to build a future of peace, security, and coexistence.